So this is about plurality vote. I emphasize that because in my first take, I tried to really pronounce that word. It's a tough word, plurality, which is a simple majority, which is first past the post, which is the most common one, it seems, in the United States. So here's a typical one, 2020 United States Senate election in Alaska. The two main candidates were Dan Sullivan and Al Gross. And we can see that Dan Sullivan won with 191,000 votes and 53.9%, which is a plurality. And on top of it, it's also a majority. It's not necessary to have that majority. Plurality still wins. Simple majority first past the post. All right, so this is a typical one in the United States. By the way, I don't know why there isn't a photo for Al Gross. Maybe there is no Creative Commons one or non-copyright one. In any case, all right, let's go to another one, which is this one here. There we go. 2008 United States Senate election in Alaska. So I think that's 12 years earlier. That was actually, by the way, the same Senate seat 12 years earlier. And notice that Mark Begich won with 151,000 votes and 47.77%. He won the plurality vote and therefore became elected. For when a plurality vote is necessary, a majority doesn't have to be. So usually they do get more than 50%, but they don't have to. 47.77%. Apparently there was at least one third-party candidate in here that took away enough votes from either candidate so that they would have less than 50%. In fact, there was Bob Burt here, the 4.15%. So if he hadn't been there, then Mark Begich or Ted Stevens would have gotten perhaps either one of them more than 50%. In any case, it wasn't even necessary. 47.77%, first past the post, plurality won. And that's actually it on this first segment. All right, so this is from a website called 270towin.com. There's all kinds of information. I'm not going to say that the information is good or bad, but it's accurate because this kind of election information you can get anywhere, in Wikipedia, anywhere on the books for elections. The reason why I chose this one is not only do they have the results very quickly, but also they show us the outcome of the Electoral College across the entire United States. I chose this one first here because it was a relatively close election. 62 million versus 59 million. Actually, that's still quite a margin, but compared to others, it's actually relatively close. And then also notice that the Electoral College votes are relatively close. So 270 to win. So George W. Bush got 286, and we can see here the map of the United States and the states that George W. Bush won and the ones that John Kerry won. And in each of these states, they need to have the plurality vote in order to get all their electors for that state. So it's winner takes all. With two exceptions, perhaps, which is at the time, I don't know if Maine and Nebraska already had that, but in any case, all five went to Nebraska, ones went to Bush, and all four went to John Kerry in Maine. And I don't know exactly what happened in... Oh, yes, you can read up on that, what actually happened in Minnesota. I think it's called an unfaithful elector that actually won, and actually voted for his running mate, John Edwards, instead of John Kerry. Okay, anyway, that's the 2008. No, I'm sorry, the 2004. And I'm going to move on to the 1980 election. Give myself a break, though. And I think there is a relatively quick way to get there. So historical, and I want to go to 1980. Here we go. And there's a reason why I chose this particular one. So here we go. Ronald Reagan was elected. There was a third-party candidate who took some votes away, I guess. Can express it that way. Notice that Ronald Reagan won with 43 million here. 35 million went to Jimmy Carter, 5 million to John Anderson, for a total in the neighborhood of like 85 million. So if this wasn't the Electoral College, then we would see, well, Ronald Reagan would get a little bit more than half of those, Jimmy Carter a little bit less than that, and John Anderson would get, well, less than 10%, but still in the neighborhood of like 6 or 7%. However, it is not the popular vote, it is the Electoral College, and that is the law in the United States for presidential elections. So notice that Ronald Reagan, yeah, he had a comfortable margin over Jimmy Carter, but notice he got 10 times as many electoral votes, because all that counts is then in each state to get a plurality, and that then gives all the electors to that candidate. So even though Jimmy Carter still had in the neighborhood of 40% of the vote, he only got 10% of the electors, because again, that's the law in the United States. And John Anderson didn't get anything despite having 5 million votes. All right, the next one I want to show is actually this one here. It's on Wikipedia. So United States, list of United States presidential election by popular vote, margin timeline, and again, the popular vote doesn't matter. And there's a number of interesting things on here. One of those that I want to point out, it's actually just off the chart, so I have to scroll over there. There we go. This one I want to point out, it's at the lower right margin. Election won without plurality of popular vote. Again, it doesn't matter. So you can see that there's a number of presidents, Donald Trump, George W. Bush, who didn't win the popular vote. So their opponent, in this case Hillary Clinton, and in this case Al Gore, had more votes across the United States. But it is the Electoral College that decides who's going to become president. So again, the popular vote actually doesn't matter. That's what I want to point out here. And if you look for this black star here, it happened to Benjamin Harrison, happened to Rutherford Hayes, I had to look up his first name here, and to John Quincy Adams. I'm not sure, these green bars here, I think they're actually opponents, and then I think it went to the House of Representatives that then elected the president back in 1824. All right, so I wanted to show this one as an intermission. So you don't have to get the popular vote across the United States as long as you win the Electoral College. So here I'm going to go back. Let's see, the one that I wanted to look at is the 1992 election, and won by Bill Clinton. And notice here the popular vote for him was 44 million. George Bush, the father to George W. Bush, 39 million, and there was a significant third-party candidate, Ross Perot, 19 million votes, who by all third candidates got the most ever in any presidential election. When you add these numbers together, you come up with a little bit more than 100 million votes, of which Bill Clinton got 44 million, so that's less than 50%. So he did get the popular vote, less than 50% though, across the country, but either way, it doesn't matter, because what does matter is the Electoral College. So he won 370 of those. George Bush, having just a few, I guess 5 million votes less, got much less than he did, 168. You know, this is like a 2/3 versus 1/3. Well, this one here, the popular votes, is more like 45% versus 38%, something like that. Right? And then Ross Perot, despite of getting almost 20% of the total, 19 million out of 100 million is about 20%, got zero because he never won the plurality vote in any one of the states, so he ended up with 0 electors. So again, that's kind of how the Electoral College works, and of course it's different from the plurality vote. Of course, within each state to get the electors, North Dakota, Wyoming, Kansas, Texas, it is the plurality vote within that state that determines who's going to get all those electors from any given state. All right, a little break here for me. All right, so as I looked at these maps, I wasn't so quite sure when Maine and Nebraska started doing that. So it says right here, 1972, Maine, since 1972, Maine awards 2 electoral votes based on the statewide vote, 1 vote for each of the 2 congressional districts. It's rare that this results in a split vote. It has done so only twice, very recently actually. The only other state to allow for split electoral college votes is Nebraska. So that means that the other 48 states do not split the electoral college votes, but the plurality winner in each of the other 48 states gets the entire electoral college votes in that state. Okay, let's go to Nebraska. I think it's at 1992. Since 1992, Nebraska awards 2 electoral college votes based on the statewide vote and 1 vote for each of the 3 congressional districts. The only other state to allow for split electoral college votes is Maine. All right, just want to clarify that. All right, so this is ranked choice voting, which is interesting to us in Alaska because we just established that in 2022. Respectively, the measure was up in 2020. And so here's a map of the United States, and it's some statewide elections. As far as senators, representatives, and the president are concerned, it is only Alaska and Maine that do that. And then you see that certain things, local elections or municipalities or actually RCV banned statewide. So here we go. It is also called an instant runoff voting. So RCV means that the candidate needs to have more than 50%. And if there are third and fourth party candidates, that might sometimes not happen. And then he has to go to a runoff if that absolute majority is required, which that is one of these premises for the ranked choice voting. And this one is instant because here you get a ballot that shows the 4 candidates. That's the typical thing for Alaska these days. And you put little crosses on each one of them if you want to and rank them. That's the word rank in there. And then, of course, there's the choice in there. Okay, so let's look at one, which is the House of Representatives. Let's see if I can make this a little smaller so it all fits on here. Okay, all right, maybe so. There we go, looks a little bit better. So that's why it was in 2022. There were 3 candidates. The 4th candidate, which, by the way, was Al Gross, I mentioned him earlier, had actually dropped out. So there were only 3, and I forgot if there was a write-in on this one here. And let's see, this is the special, this actually is the special election. So earlier that year, Alaska Solar Representative Don Young had died while still in office after, I believe, almost 50 years, 49 years. So there was a special election. That's why it says here August 16, 2022. And then there was one in November 2022. By the way, same 3 candidates, just 3 months later. And also same outcome. So here we have Mary Peltola, who received 39.7% of the vote, 30.9% for Sarah Palin, and 27.8% for Nick Begich. And since it's not the plurality vote anymore, she didn't win with the 39.7%. She needs 50%. So She needs that absolute majority, so I'm going to go down to, let's see, I hope I'm going to get to the results. There we go. There it is. Okay, and now it gets interesting, of course. I'm going to see if I can expand this a little bit here. Oh, it almost fits. Ooh, it almost fits on here. There we go. As I said, almost. All right, so here's that 39.66% for Mary Peltola, but it's not enough. So what happens now is first choice, and then in round one, the write-in, I guess, so it was a write-in, so different candidates was eliminated. Some of these votes became, I believe, invalid. I guess it says right here, blank or inactive ballots. So of the 2,974, they were now distributed. So here, a certain amount of candidates, or these candidates then got this many more votes. Notice that Mary Peltola now got up to 40.19%. That's still not enough because, again, it's supposed to be an absolute majority, not just a plurality. And then the next candidate was eliminated, and since Nick Begich here was the third candidate at this point and only two would remain, it would have to be that one of them gets more than 50%, unless it's a total tie at 50.0, right? So then Nick Begich, 53,810. Again, there might have been some inactive ballots or blank that didn't go to either one of them. Actually, quite a few. Looks like even 11,000. Because Mary Peltola got 15,000 from him, Sarah Palin got 27,000 from him. That doesn't add up to 53, right? So 11,000 went down here. So apparently for their third choice or second choice for Nick Begich, they didn't put anything in there. They don't have to. And so in any case, Mary Peltola then got up to 51.5%, and that won her the seat. Here, this particular table for results shows you the two rounds, the first round here, the second round here, and how those votes here migrated from the right end down here, that's in gray, and then from Nick Begich here, what kind of color is that here, like kind of faint orange, right? And then goes up here and becomes blue for Mary Peltola and kind of reddish for Sarah Palin. All right, that's actually it. And in hindsight, I wish I would have chosen the Senate race for the same year, actually, in 2022, because that was more interesting. There were actually 4 candidates, and they had to go through these 3 rounds in order to determine the winner. And again, it's an instant runoff, so you don't vote again. You already did it. You already did the ranked choice voting. All right, that's it.